welcome to another episode of Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. Welcome to the show. I want to thank everybody who's watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube for joining in. And remember, those folks on YouTube, if you don't mind, scroll down, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. It'll let you know every time there's a new show on our YouTube page. And you can catch us here almost every day of the week with the Christian and Daniel Show, the Card Devo, and a couple of episodes to Put It Together on Saturdays. So make sure you catch that. Remember, Put It Together Conversations is a show about folks, where they come from, where they are now, and what their journey is like. And the idea is to motivate and inspire you to go after your own dreams and goals. And my guest today, let me put up her name. My guest today is Deslynn Jaquias, and let me tell you a little bit about her. She was born and raised in Kaua'i, but she's fortunate to also live in Oahu, Maui, and overseas in Japan. She's a proud mother, entrepreneur, and passionate to bring hope and healing globally with Aloha. She's a speaker, owner of Healing with Aloha and Kaua'i Girl Brands. I'm going to let her say that when she comes on because I just butchered that. And an empowerment coach. She's empowering people to utilize their gifts to achieve their goals through social media and virtual events. I can speak Spanish, but obviously I can't speak Hawaiian. So let's bring her on. Hello, Deslynn. How are you doing?
Hi, Daniel. You're fine. It's Kaua'i.
Well, you think you... I'm going to let that one go for now. Just let it go. How are you, sweetie? It's so good to see you.
I'm good. I'm so happy to see you because I've had you on my podcast, and it's an honor to be on yours.
Yes. For those of you who always wonder how people make, I first found her. I thought it was first on Instagram, but she corrected me before the show started. I actually found you first on Tick-Tock, and then we connected on Tick-Tock. And I think I was on some of your lives, right? And I would comment on stuff.
Yes, and I was commenting on yours too.
And then we moved our relationship over to Instagram. Oh, we have some people. Hi. Oh, hi, sweetheart. How are you doing?
Aloha, guys.
And our friend Piper's here. And then we moved over to Instagram. And then I had you mentioned if anybody wants to be on my lives, I was like, I'm there. Put me in. Put me in, coach. I want in. And but your lives you have a pretty big following, and you're so inspirational and motivational, and I just love that about you. So it was just a perfect fit for my spirituality.
We're a match.
Plus, for those of you that have never seen them, they get a little adult, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to check them out. But how are you? How's everything going?
I'm doing great. It's actually a nice day. It's getting cooler here. I mean, not as cold as where you are, but it can get really hot. I'm on the island of Kaua'i, on one of the Hawaiian islands, and so last year it wasn't hot, it wasn't cold, and so we kind of appreciate the breeze and just the coolness.
And for everybody watching, don't worry. At the end of the show, as usual, I'll put up her site so you can go check it out and find everything that she does. But I feel like you have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to shut up. And Deslynn Jaquias, can you tell us how you put it together?
Yeah, so I started a podcast called Healing with Aloha. I'm one of 4 children, and back in 2001, unfortunately, my younger sister passed away unexpectedly, and it was really difficult for me because I don't know about you, but in my family and growing up in the islands, as an older sibling, it's part of your responsibility to watch over your younger sibling. And so when she passed away, I had a really difficult time on my grief journey because I was the first person that I had lost. And so fast forward to, so she passed away 2001, and in 2006, I was pregnant, and my older sister had already started therapy, and she said, I think you need to go to therapy because when you become a parent, you don't realize the things that you've been through until you become a parent. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I was having a difficult time. And so I listened to my older sister. I love my sister, Jody. And I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was really interesting because although I went in to deal with and process the grief of my sister, uh, I was also dealing with the trauma that I never dealt with my whole life. And so there was multiple events that I had gone through way before my sister was she passed away. Being exposed to people who I love, who were instrumental in my life, who dealt with addiction and alcoholism, incarceration, and abuse. I finally hit like just the top part of all of that during the therapy because it was like for trauma therapy. So that was the journey. I became a mom, and then I moved away from Hawaii, all the way to Japan for my ex-husband's job. And so while I was there, our marriage was already not doing well before I had my son, and it just deteriorated. And then I moved back here. What I realized in the process, because I lost more family, my grandparents, my dad died unexpectedly, my grandmother died. So it was like multiple losses on top of being divorced in 2009 and becoming a single mom. Um, I I realized when it hit the 17-year mark of my sister's passing that I needed to help someone. I already had been speaking since the age of 19 here in the islands, like to churches, nonprofits, and also to public schools. And I thought, if I can touch one life for someone who feels alone and to help them with their grief, encourage them with their mental health, then I did my part. And so the grief journey became a healing journey. And so in 2018, I launched Healing with Aloha. And healing, I learned it's an ongoing process. There is no quick fix. Um, People don't understand why we struggle with certain things in our lives, but it's an ongoing process. To the day you die is just when you're dealing with certain things, the pain isn't as strong or heavy hearted as it was, like for me 20 years ago. Um, and then aloha is more than just, they say commercialized. Aloha is hello and goodbye. It's from your soul, it's from your heart. It is the ability to have kindness and the desire to see people win and to do better without expecting nothing back.
Yeah.
And so that's why the podcast is called Healing with Aloha. And so, yeah, so through the podcast, I started off by myself. And then last year during the pandemic, I said, you know what? Everybody has a story to tell. I'm going to open it up for guests. And then that's why I have all the guests that I have now.
That's pretty cool. And I'm so glad you brought up PTSD, because a lot of people have this concept or this idea that PTSD is for soldiers, policemen, people who are out in traumatic situations.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that we can live in traumatic situations and we don't even realize it. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's losses, there's health, because I was diagnosed with health-related PTSD, which is my body just reacts to certain things in a certain way when that trauma pops in my head, when I'm triggered. And I did not realize it for a long time. How did PTSD, what were the symptoms for you, and how do you work through them?
So let me rewind back. So the one thing that I don't talk about is because of all the different situations I was going through as a child, I did attempt to end my life when I was in middle school.
Oh, wow.
And so that's not something I genuinely talk about, but because I sit on the task force here for prevention for suicide, I felt that it's time for me to admit, like, this is something that I dealt with. And so what happened is I learned that I learned to detach myself from life. Like, I was high functioning, but you wouldn't have known because you just learn to cope. Like, what can I do to just get through the day? And the way you're raised is like you don't talk about your problems. Back in the days, like our parents weren't encouraged to go to therapy or to get help, and our grandparents. And so here I am. And so with the whole post-traumatic stress disorder, I didn't even understand that until I was 31 when I started doing therapy. And it was interesting because you could easily think it was because of my sister. So my sister passed away because she was in a vehicle accident. And that's traumatic because I spoke to her that day and she was gone that night. But while I was digging through all of that, then the questions come, and then I started uncovering a lot of painful events that I never spoke about. And then I was able to start processing, and it was hard, and it wasn't easy, but it was worth it.
I want to bring up this comment that I was quoting. A Christian says, "I have PTSD from caretaking for me." Yeah. So for people who don't know, this is my partner Christian, and he went talking about traumas. He went through the traumas of seeing me be very sick and dying and being brought back and emergency rooms, and he gets triggered. I've moved on from that particular moment, but it sticks with him. So for those of you out there who I feel like we know the signs, but we ignore them. But I want to bring up this other comment that he said that he's also raised that way. I think it's a brown thing. I think most of us who are brown, we don't believe in talking about our problems. We don't believe in therapists. No, what do you mean go to a therapist? That's in my family. That's local. You're not going to go and talk to somebody about your issues. Like, go work it out. Go do something. Go get a job.
There's shame and guilt.
Yeah.
Maybe because they know if you're going to talk about it, then it's going to bring up everything.
Yeah. And the proverbial onion and the layers, because we know if for anybody who's been to therapy, you know that the top layer is just for show, because we're hiding so much stuff. And as I'm taking notes, like the losses in your life, moving away from home, basically, a relationship that's not working out, raising a child, like all these things how did you manage through it at the time? I mean, I know there's a lot of coping mechanisms, but what was your coping mechanism?
Pray, God, calling my mom and my sister a lot. I took initiative to make relationships with people I never met before on the military base. I struggled. I didn't do. I was crying a lot. I was insecure as a parent, and I just felt like at a loss. I slept a lot in between, like taking care of my son. I was a stay-at-home mom, but I struggled, and that's why I tell people, like, you have to be gentle and you have to be kind to yourself. So in essence, it was good that we did separate and get divorced, because I was fragile. At the end of the marriage, I was like fragile already.
And we are our worst caretakers. We can be so bad to each other. I have no regrets of any of my decisions, though, and would do it all again if I went back. Yeah, I think
I don't regret. I would do it all over again for my son.
Yeah, and then what I've learned for me, the things that I've learned for myself, which makes me the advocate I am today, which makes me the public speaker I am today. Even the actor and the comic in me, like those struggles make me better. Like I can pull from my drama and make fun of it now, which helps.
Well, humor is valuable in healing. Humor.
Yeah. I've been seeing a therapist for a year now, and I'm in such a better place psychologically and emotionally than at the start. Still have a long way to go. Oh yeah, like once you start that hike,
you find the right connection. It's awesome. You gotta, interview, make sure they're appropriate for you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Some people prefer coaching, and some people prefer therapy. Some people prefer like seeing a pastor or whatnot. So different strokes for each folk. You know what I mean? Like everybody has their own needs.
But I just feel like all that trauma, all that sadness, all that stress, it's not meant to stay with us. We're not meant to keep it. And it's interesting because in the show earlier, for those of you who caught the noon show with Colonel Justin Blum, he was talking about that. He's a cancer survivor. No cancer survivor. He had an ostomy, colitis, and he was talking about that stress affected him physically. So for those of you, it's not just emotionally, it's physically too, that stress and anxiety will affect you. Before we continue, I want to remind everybody you're watching Put It Together Conversations. My guest today is the lovely Ms. Desi Jaquias, and we're talking about therapy, family losses, and bouncing back. And here's another comment from Christian. You have to be willing to take care of yourself first and everyone else second. You cannot give what you don't have.
Exactly. And you know what? As a parent, because I didn't realize how much I was neglecting myself until I got separated and then divorced. Because everything was about my husband, everything was about my son, and it was scary to finally go, who am I? I didn't know who I was. And when you're burnt out and you're exhausted, it's scary to get back to you.
And then that's such a, like, you're standing over the rabbit hole looking at it, but then as you get mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausted, it's like you jump in the rabbit hole, and then it's just the loop, because your exhaustion tells you, I don't know about you, but it tells me you're worthless, you're no good, you're disappointing everybody, and it's more draining until you're like a car on fumes.
Yeah.
Barely making it to the next gas station, just see the bump up again.
Rolling.
Right? And that's when people come out of the woodworks to help you push yourself to the next stop. And that's, but you've got to be willing to accept the help. What was it that allowed you to get the help that you needed?
In the beginning was my older sister. So my sister and I are only 13 months apart, and she's like a second mom, and my sister's like my hero, like my inspiration, my role model. I love both of my sisters, but she was just encouraging. So even recently, like I had stopped doing therapy, and then she was like, I think you should go back. But she's so loving about it. She has like this loving nudge. She doesn't get frustrated. She's just like, I think it would be good for you. And I think it matters when people are gentle and patient and kind to you. It makes a difference in your healing process. But if people get frustrated and upset because you're depressed or you have anxiety, like that just makes it worse.
Yeah. How did you start? Because I'm sure, I don't know if it works for you. I'm probably putting words in your story, but for most of us that have gone through a situation like that, especially the PTSD part, there comes a moment where you have to break everything down and rebuild it in a way that's going to help you. Did you have that moment where you're like, people, places, and things in your life that no longer fit?
Right when I was like, okay, I'm going to process the pain with the loss of my sister, I came home in July. My grandmother passed away unexpectedly that same year. And then I was still processing the divorce. So I felt like I got whacked down, like emotionally, mentally, physically. And I was like, I don't even know the last time I spoke to her. So it hurt. And then I was living in Japan, and I got my ex-husband and I, he notified me he wanted a divorce while we're on vacation.
Oh.
And so it was like, okay, I'm trying to process my sister. And then I find I'm getting divorced on vacation. And then my grandmother dies. And then the divorce finalizes. And just when I'm like, okay, I'm adjusting to being a single mom. Thank God I have my parents helping me raise, and my grandparents. And then my dad dies unexpectedly within less than 24 hours. And, so it was like, I just couldn't handle that. I cannot handle any more pain right now, guys. And then the next year, my grandfather died of cancer. So it was like, you just feel like knocked down. And so I don't think I really came out of the woodworks because my sister died 2001 and then my grandfather died 2013. So it was like crawling. I used to tell people, like, hey, even if you have to crawl to heaven, that, like, to me, success was just getting out of bed, because I didn't want to get out of bed. Like, I was like, I cannot do it any more pain. Like, this is too much for a person. But my son was 2.5 years old. And every time I looked at him, he wasn't crying. He wasn't missing the dad. He loves his dad, but he was 2.5 years old. He was so joyful through the whole process of the divorce and after, that I had to catch up to my son in in enjoying life. Like he wasn't broken. Like in my mind, I'm like, I never wanted him to have a single parent. I wanted him to have both parents. The dream, like that was my dream. But he never once faltered. Like he just loved life. And I could see God's love shine through him. And then that's what gave me courage to pursue dreams. Um, I had to focus, and so that's when I started my first brand, Kaua'i Girl, in 2011. And then Dad died. I was teaching Zumba at the time, and then I stopped teaching Zumba. And so it's like I was trying to make headway forward, but life just kept happening.
Yeah, life's a trickster. It'll give you a whole lot, and then it'll be like, okay, time to pay up. And that's like,
you almost feel like that worthy of being happy because you're like, oh my God, what's next? Like you're always waiting for something to pop up. But I have to learn to focus on my mindset and to just, I'm deserving, I'm worthy,
Yeah, we have another comment for you. Some says, that's an awesome statement. Some days it is important to honor and give ourselves a pat on the back for our achievements. And sometimes just get out of bed, it's a miraculous achievement. Yeah, and I tell my clients in my spiritual coaching, like, there are days when victory is brushing your teeth. And
for real.
Yes, like, let's do that. And then other days, victory is like you cleaned out all your emails from 20 days. And yes, like, and
little.
But I think it's also, I'm going to go back to culture. I think culturally, we're not allowed to celebrate. It's
be humble.
Yeah, it's like I going to school sometimes when I was a teen, and I had a good upbringing. My teenage years were good, but I was still like in the closet, and there were days when I was stressful, but just like, my parents were not the kind of like, oh, you went to school, great. They're like, that's your job. You should
positive reinforcement.
Yeah, you're like, can I have this moment? But one thing that you talked about is seeing the joy in your son. And I think that is so important too, because there are times when in our darkness, in that dark of the tunnel, we can't see other people's joy. And the judgment of other people being happy, the comparisons, the why them, not me kind of thing. Did you go through any of that? And if you did, how did you come through it?
Well, I go through more towards adults, because at the time, like in my family, I'm one of 24 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
Like everybody's like dating or married or, so it's like I was the one getting divorced. And so you just feel like the odd man out. So I felt more insecure with that. With my son, when my son was born, I was like, oh my gosh, I just absolutely love him. But then I felt guilty for being happy because I felt like I'm supposed to mourn my sister and I can't enjoy life, But then I realized that that God would want me to celebrate life, and whenever I would hear my son laugh, because my son has this thing about laughing, like, so I parent him through laughter. I don't know how to, like I do talk to him seriously, but like to get my point across, I just say, so you want to debate me? Go ahead. I'm gonna win, and then he'll be like, never mind. You know what I mean? And so what I learned from him was like, he just appreciated every day. Like I was like, man, I'm over here crying and this guy is just enjoying life. And I'm like, okay, I need to catch up to him. And so the courage to launch my own brand, to teach Zumba came from him. I thought, if I ever want my son to follow his dreams, I gotta be an example. And that's why I had to show up. I was scared teaching Zumba. Every time I taught Zumba, I was scared. But body movement is healthy and it's good for your soul. It's good for your mental health, but I had to just show up scared, like completely anxiety scared, show up scared, crying scared. Because it ends up, after a while, the fear, the energy, the negative, it fades out. At that moment, it fades out. But you have to move, and music is key, and humor.
Yeah, I feel like the scariest part is that first step. It's just opening the door, taking that step. And then once you're there, it's like when you're a kid and you're jumping off the diving board on the deep end.
You're like,
Yeah, the scary part is not going up the stairs or walking across the diving board. It's when you're standing on the diving board and all of a sudden you look down, you're like, shit.
I'm gonna die.
Yes, I'm gonna die. And they're like, and then you look and everybody's looking at you.
And they're waiting, like, hurry up.
Although in real life, most people aren't even looking at us. Like people don't care about me.
Yeah.
But we feel like everybody's watching me. And then as soon as you just jump. I mean, that the worst thing that's gonna do is you belly flop.
And that hurts.
And that hurts, yeah. And then but you've done it, and then you just go back and try it again. But yeah, it's those first steps. But there's another thing that you just said that I really like is the laughter thing. Is we assume, because we've been taught that you mourn people through sadness, dress in black, cry, don't play music, be miserable, and we're gonna remember our friend who had a good time all the time and was happy and laughed, but we're gonna remember him sad. And I'm like, why are we doing
you know what is ironic? For my sister, the one who passed away, she lived 23 years and she lived like to the fullest. She was like, I swear she should have been a Def Comedy Jam. She's super funny. When people came to a funeral, they're like, oh, she's my best friend. I'm like, really? Everybody thinks my sister's their best friend. You know what I mean? It was just like, she just had this warmth about her, and she was adventurous. And I mean, I felt like a proud sister. Like when people walk up to me and they say, oh, I remember this, I highly encourage people, if you have good memories of someone who passed away, tell them. Like in your mind, you don't want to remind them. But when people tell me great things that she did, like she was nice and caring, I'm like, that's my sister. You know what I mean? Because I helped raise her too. And so it makes me proud. And I feel like when I crack jokes, I'm not as funny as her, but I carry on her legacy.
I beg to differ. You're pretty funny. You said I didn't know her, but you're pretty funny in your own right. But yeah, and talking about the mourning part and talking about us, our individual journey, I think that we also should give ourselves permission to mourn the old self, the old us, the person that was standing on top of the diving board versus the person that jumped. They're two different people. Mm-hmm. And because I think about like my journey in drugs and alcohol, when I got clean and sober, I did mourn that party animal Daniel, because he was part of me. He took chances. He was he had no inhibitions. And then I stopped and I went into like stop mode, like, oh no, I gotta be careful. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna mourn you, but I'm gonna live that adventurous life sober now. And people think that when they start changing, they need to change everything, and it's not everything, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, definitely when you're grieving the loss of somebody, you have every right to give yourself permission to be different. You don't have to hurry up, like, because everybody processes pain and grief differently. For me, I didn't know who I was gonna be. You know what I mean? Like it's been 20 years. Now last month just hit 20, and I'm probably more compassionate. I'm more loving, more patient, more empathetic, and I don't care now what people think. I dance. I go on TikTok and Instagram, and I just sing and I dance and I inspire people because I don't care. Like I don't care if you think I look weird or if you don't like what I do. I just want to lean into people who are like sunshine.
And if you want to catch Desi in her full, you've got to catch her latest rendition of Como la Flor by Selena. It's on her stories on Instagram right now. That's where I saw it. But is it on your TikTok as well?
It's on my Deslynn for Kaua'i, yes. Como la Flor, yes.
So you got I saw it pop up, and I
don't
just
think you never seen it before, huh? It was
no.
hidden.
Well, I just hearted it. I'm like, oh, let me just support her. And then I went back and listened. I'm like, she's singing in Spanish. Like, you go, girl. You go como la flor. You go, you crazy flower, you.
Yeah, because I Selena passed when I just graduated high school. I was like, oh, so, and then I took Spanish in high school, and then my neighbor in Japan, he could speak Spanish. He couldn't, in Japanese, he couldn't speak English. So I was like using Spanish in Japan. It was awesome.
I think it's awesome, especially, I mean, I'm a big Selena fan, so I thought it was like,
Oh,
you go,
really?
girl. You go como la flor. Before we continue, I want to remind everybody you're watching Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. Our guest today is the wonderful Miss Deslynn Jaquias, and we're talking about personal victories, finding your joy, and your courage. And we have another question for you on the board.
Okay.
It's, how do you recenter and root yourself when you start to spiral or feel out of control?
Okay. I create TikTok videos. I find that music, it calms my brain, because my brain can get so like that. I create videos to encourage someone. So whether it's through dancing, and then I put up like an inspirational phrase over my dancing, or I share like a message that I'm going through, because I know, like, if I'm struggling with my anxiety or I'm feeling insecure, if I talk about it, I'm sure someone can relate to me. And then I like to watch comedy, and painting. I like to do painting.
Yeah, I just discovered painting, so I'm right with you on that.
What? Are you
We'll
serious?
talk about that in a minute, but um, there is such a beautiful, because I'm like, I agree with you. When I've been more in pain spiritually, my best medicine is, what can I do for somebody else? Like, what can I do? Like, for instance, even when I was going through cancer, I was still doing card readings for people because it just filled my energy to be able to do something for somebody else.
And
And
it's
I
not
think,
even major. It's like small. Like you're not overextending too much.
yeah, that whole summer, I think I didn't charge for a single reading. It was just, for those of you wondering, I went through cancer from Cinco de Mayo, from May 5th through 4th of July. That was really the hard treatment time. But that whole summer, I don't think I charged for readings, hardly, if I did. It was all just like, I just wanted, in order for me to gain energy, I had to give energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made me feel better. Um, so let's talk about TikTok and social media, because you brought it up, and people don't think, there are folks out there who say, again, mentality, brown people mentality, I am not going to put my dirty laundry out there for everybody to see. So never mind going on social media and sharing my struggles. What was the voice the first time you started sharing your story on social media?
There are certain things I keep in smaller groups or one-on-one, but like, people feeling like not good enough, not worthy of being loved, um, just like how you feel as a parent. Like, I think it's just common grounds that people can feel. Um, I think that's what I focus on. I mean, I shared about my sister a few times and whatnot, but I do pay attention to what people post that follow me. So when people follow me, I tend to follow them. And based upon what they're sharing, it inspires me to know, oh, I'm going to be vulnerable, because then it'll make them feel not so alone.
That's
And
pretty cool.
I look at it like it's about the power of one. I'm not worried about everybody. I just want to make one person feel loved and encouraged.
I think that's a really good idea. It's,
because then it doesn't overwhelm you.
yeah, there is, I feel, and please, for everybody out there, it's not cockiness or, oh, look at me, but I do feel like like, I've been doing public speaking and education stuff for over 20 years now, and it's on an international platform now, and But that's a really smart idea. It's like you want to connect with your followers.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to do that is to follow them and see what they're going through and find those similarities. Where are you now, body, mind, and spirit?
I feel like this is the most and joy that I've ever experienced in the 20 years since my sister's passing. And because last year I went through a really difficult time from October to December. I was checking, but I never posted from the ending of October all the way to December. Like my close friends were like, "Are you okay?" Because I generally post every day to encourage people or to crack jokes. I post memes and stuff like that. But this is the most happiest I've been, and it's because I just decided I'm just gonna be me, and I'm not gonna worry if my family or friends are watching and they don't approve. I just gotta be authentic to myself, not for the likes, you know. And I don't pay attention to numbers. Although when I did start the podcast, Healing with Aloha for the podcast, the Instagram, I was dealing with so much anxiety last year. Oh no, January this year. I was like, I just want no last year, the 20th, 2020. I just want 10 people to follow me. That's it, guys. And so now I'm like over 2,000, and as it was going up to 100, I'm like, why are they following me? Like, I don't know why they're following me. Like, I was getting anxiety. And then I finally just said, what? You just focus on being loving and encouraging.
Yeah, I stopped, and I know this is something that people who don't have a lot of followers say, but I stopped caring about the numbers. At some point, I had to get up, but actually, I paused my TikTok for a little bit. I haven't posted stuff because we're going through a rebranding of my spiritual work.
Okay.
More from readings to spiritual coaching. So I wanted to give it a pause to go, but today's show's not about me, folks. Sorry, guys.
We're revamping.
Because we've been talking a little bit about brown people and our culture, because I feel like there's a lot of similarities between our cultures.
Yeah, so I'm Filipino, Hawaiian, Spanish, Chinese, guys. So I'm mixed race. So and
like I feel like all brown people, we share the same kind. Like if you start talking to a Filipino or a Hawaiian, or you're like, do we have the same parents? Are we brothers? Because
yes.
we have that. Like you can't move without the approval. Like even at 50 years old, living miles away from my family in Texas, there are still things that I do that I tell Christian, like, this is not for sharing. This is between us. Like we don't, like, don't say anything, or I won't do something because I'm like, what if my family sees it?
Yeah,
like, you're a 50-year-old man. Like, what the hell? But how have you been able? Because I was going to ask that earlier. How have you been able, or have you been able to remove that part of your life in order to make yourself better?
Yeah, so I started. No. I'm in progress on people pleasing, wanting to get approval. The one thing I have to come to realize is that my family and friends have fears. And when they tell me not to do something, it's their fear of rejection, it's their fear of failure. And so I actually have to show up on behalf of them to break the generational trauma, or to break the generational like whatever has held us back in our ancestors and our family. I have to show up, and I can do it in a respectful manner without like throwing people under the bus.
Yeah.
I can still talk about things without identifying people in my family or my friends. So it's done in a classy way. It's done in a loving way.
Chris is saying the chancla, because in Mexico, the flip flops, those are weapons, man. Your mom throws that chancla at you, and it's like a boomerang. It hits you, and then she grabs it again.
The pinch.
Did you get the pinch? Was you the pinch?
So my mom had 4 of us, and there's 3 girls. I'm the one who gave her the most white hairs. And so when I was little, and I don't remember, but my mom's like, I said, Mom, why is that lady fat? And my mom's like, oh my gosh. And then, my mom pinched me, but it's like, I don't know, but because my mom raised us, you don't judge people, you don't tease people, especially people with special needs. You do not tease people. You know what I mean? And my grandparents, they the Filipino side, they mostly, and then my grandmother, the Hawaiian grandma, is like, you show aloha respect. You know what I mean? But yeah, I fear. I'll admit I get scared every now and then. Like, oh, what if they don't like what I do? But you know what? I was always like that in high school, so it's not like it's new. Like me singing and dancing is like, as much as my mom is an introvert and I'm an extrovert, it's like, okay, it is what it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she just doesn't say nothing. There's not no, I'm so proud of you. I seen your video. You're like off the chain, girl. You know what I mean? Like, she was never like that. I'm literally my mom's opposite, like, child. Like real, like this. My mom's a bull, and I'm like the butterfly.
See, I get concerned with my comedy whenever I do stand up.
Oh, why you use them?
Because there's been times when, like, yeah, like, and I cuss more. Comedy is pretty much the only place where I'll throw in some words, and then I'm like, my family's gonna see this because I don't really cuss in front of them a whole lot.
Right.
Yeah, I don't like, it's not comfortable, but then I do it in comedy.
If I would do comedy on my family, I would do it in LA. I wouldn't. If my mom, I said, you guys know Joe Coy? I was like, my mom is more than Joe Coy's mom.
We're gonna have to, when you come to Southern California, for those of you watching, we're gonna have to do like a live show somewhere.
We'll do an open mic somewhere.
Girl, that would be. But yeah, I understand you. Like but for everybody watching, we're not. And I'm sure you think the same thing. We're not tearing down our culture. We're not breaking down, because definitely my culture, my upbringing, everything from the religious to the cultural to the social society norms that we have made me who I am also, and they've influenced who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what I think is, you take what works and then you modify what doesn't work for you, because we're in a different generation, and so is our kids. So the things that was done to you that didn't motivate you, I wouldn't recommend that you do it upon your kid. Because if you didn't like being yelled at, or like if you didn't like certain values imposed upon you, the way the delivery, it's like a lot of it was correct, like what was said. It's the delivery. And so I don't, like, I wouldn't trade my parents for the world. Like, I absolutely love my parents, and I'm eternally grateful. They were teenagers when they became parents. I'm the third of the 4, and so I respect them, because they could have decided, I'll have my grandparents raise us, but they took it upon themselves to be parents. And so I don't think I would ever trade them. I just think that if I could go back, I would like try to encourage them, like, try this way instead of that way. And so all I can do is change today, because I can't. I've talked to both my parents separately, and I've resolved my past with them. And I'm fortunate not everybody has that chance, but I feel like I've healed wounds that a lot of people walk around carrying.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, is making peace with things, because I did that when my mom passed away last year. There were certain things that I inherited from my mom, a lot of phobias, a lot of fears that I inherited from her. So when she passed, I had to like sit down and meditate and have a session and call on her spirit and say, now that you've passed, take these with you, because it's not me, it's you. And I've been respecting it while you were alive, but now that you're not here anymore, I don't want to live in that fear. And that's such a hard thing to do. So for those of you, we'll have to talk about that in another episode. I want to remind y'all, you're watching Putting Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel Garza. My guest today is Desi Jaquias, and we've been talking about family approval and the pinches and the chanclas. So at this part of the show is where I ask my guests to share some words of wisdom with our audience. So, Jackie, what words of wisdom would you have for the audience?
If you lead with love and you lead with aloha, regardless if people take your initiation wrong, you have to know in your heart that your intentions was up to help them. A lot of times we fear, like, oh, what if this? I tell people it's better to lead with love and to offer to help people, and you figure out as you go. And when like the like how it says, oh, shine your, like, God, this little light of light, I'm gonna let it shine. I think because culturally goes against what we're told, right? Because we're supposed to be humble, right? Be humble, don't brag, don't be proud. The Bible says don't be proud, right? But when I realized, like, okay, when you shine your light, you just basically make a decision to be an extension of love and caring for other people. And if you simplify it like that, then you won't feel like, oh, I'm bragging that I can sing, or I can dance, or I can act, or I have money. If you can utilize whatever abilities and gifts that you've been given, um, and you care about people, that's how you shine your light. That's how your higher power is shown through you. That whatever you have within you, you can extend it to the next person, and then it's a ripple effect to help change the world, one at a
I
time.
love that. I love that. And I was going to touch back on something you said earlier. It's about showing up, and I think that's that's huge. Also, is especially I was just talking about this with somebody earlier today. Is like a lot of people in the Latino community, especially when they come to the States, is or we all succeed or we all fail. And every time one person tries to move up, the other people bring them down. We call it the crab.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a crab effect. Do you have that too? Because we
yeah,
talk
I
about here,
agree.
el cangrejo, like one tries to climb and the others bring him down.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to get out of that mentality. And I was just talking to Christian about that this morning. Is that like I don't know a lot of people in my family, both my parents' sides, that are gay, and I've never connected with a cousin who's gay, and I've grown up wanting that. So if any of my cousins is watching this and you're gay, please reach out. It's time we talked. But for meanwhile, I show up to say, when you're ready, I'm here, and it's okay. It's okay. I've done some of the hard work for you. Like,
Right.
does that make
I've
sense?
broken barriers.
Does that make sense to you?
I agree. Yeah, for me, like, I'm the only one who's like real entrepreneurial. Like, my family would, like, my brother has done interviews, but my other family members, like, what the hell? Like, why would you do an interview? But I feel like when doors open, like, you just go through those doors and you lead the way for other people, because there's other people coming up behind you, maybe not this year, maybe 10, 20 years, and you're giving them permission to show up and to be the best version of themselves. So.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes and I include you this, and I include myself humbly. I feel like sometimes we're like the Kool-Aid pitcher, just just breaking through walls. Like, oh yeah, like,
Right.
because
But Kool-Aid is like everybody gets like quenched.
yeah, right. Who doesn't like the Kool-Aid pitcher? You may not like Kool-Aid, but you like the pitcher. But I feel like growing up, especially like I just turned 50, and when I was in my teens, and I knew I was gay very early on, and I had to break down those walls to just to feel better for myself. The same thing with HIV and anal cancer and myostomy. Like every step of the way, I'm like, I don't see a door for me, and I'm gonna break it down. And then once I broke it down, there was people on the other side going, well,
Hey!
"Yeah, we broke a door over here for us." And you're like, "Oh well, that wasn't meant for me, so I had to do my own thing." So, does that make sense?
Yeah, no. Like, I was telling my coach, this coach Viliami Tuivai, I was telling him my dream from early on was I wanted to be a global speaker. But when I look at where I'm from, Hawaii, I don't know of anybody who has, like, done speaking, like, in my current time, that goes, like, to the US or goes overseas, that consistently that you're like, oh yeah, like you think of Tony Robbins, right? Like, oh yeah, there's so and so from Hawaii. So there's like nobody that I know of. And so it's like, okay, so basically I'm blazing my own trail. And I try not to focus on that. I understand I'm gonna love people. And I've spoken to so much teenagers, and I'm a mom that I teach them to just be yourself. Just be yourself. Like, people don't have to understand it because the dream was meant for you.
And the cool thing for everybody watching, the cool thing about being the first one in your family, in your area, is that there is nobody to compare you to. You can set the tone for what you want, and that is one of the coolest things. Because I know that, and I know there's a lot of HIV speakers, and I know there's a lot of cancer speakers, and a lot of gay speakers, but I brought them together in a way that I do it, like the way that I present, the comedy of it, the spiritual touches, the life coaching, the spiritual coaching. Like, I bring all these elements, and people look at me and sometimes, and I know people are like, what? Like, you're not all that. In my world, I am all that. But you know what I'm trying to get to is that find your niche. You don't have to be like anybody else. Find your niche, open that door. And the beautiful thing is that folks have nobody to compare you to, and you can set the standards. I can charge the things that I want to charge for public speaking now because there's nobody else.
You persevered and you did what you did.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I agree. You just put in the time. I've been speaking since I was 19. And I wasn't getting paid. I started in churches and then schools and whatnot, but I'm about to get paid. You know what I mean? But if you do what you love and love what you do, guys, like, you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
And you need people to show up too.
Yeah, but the first thing is just jump off the diving board. Who cares? Who cares what you look like on the way down? Yeah, you can scream on the way down. You can belly drop into it. Your I don't know, is it your swim trunks can fall off? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because people would admire. People will support you when you jump. People will be like, it doesn't matter how you land. They will encourage you. And do you remember the very first time that you stood in front of an audience to speak?
In church. Yeah, in church. I remember speaking in church. Mostly it started off like smaller groups and whatnot. The one that I was super scared of was when I spoke. There's like 1,000 people, and you know how like they ask you, what does the cross mean to you? I did that personal sharing. So in Hawaii, on the Oahu, they have the Stand Sheriff Center. That's where when you watch the UH games, like volleyball, basketball, it's the Stand Sheriff. Like, that's where everybody plays those games. I got to speak in that arena. And I had to talk to my mom and, tell my mom, I want to share about this because it's all personal stuff, but because I'm from this island and I was on another island, I was able to be vulnerable in that setting than I would here. Because there's less people who are familiar with me, and I didn't have to worry about people judging my story and judging me and stuff like that. But yeah, it was so worth it. I just think that there's people who walk around and they doubt themselves because they haven't seen someone like them that says me too. And so that's why I have to say I'm a domestic violence survivor. I'm an advocate now, like I survived trying to end my life, now I'm an advocate now. And so there's just certain things and I have to start being honest and open more than I was before because I'm watching people and I'm like, man, they're hurting and they just need to know they're not alone.
Yeah. And then you'd be amazed how people come out. Because once you're in her light, sharing your truth, no matter how painful, will shine your light. And when you shine that light, people will come to it. And for those of you watching, you'd be amazed at how through the pain, we shine, and that's pretty amazing. So thank you. Well, we're coming down to the last 5 minutes of the show. Anything we missed that you want to talk about real quick?
No, I'm just grateful to be here with you. I know you got to read for me on both instances when we did the card reading at the ending of my thing, and so it was very revealing.
Oh,
But I'm thankful. I feel like I've come a long way. I'm more at peace. You basically told me the first time you were on my show that I needed to stop. I was suffering because I wasn't giving myself permission to embrace joy and to live life. Because I felt like, oh, I had to hold on, like my sister died and I'm not worthy to be happy. And you basically said, okay, you suffered enough, it's time to let go. And I was crying during that whole time. And then the second time you came on, it was a more lighthearted because I guess when you pulled the card, like there was transformation and stuff. So I just think people need to give themselves permission to heal. And you will get scars. I mean, it won't be visible to other people, but there's therapists, there's coaches, there's people you can trust. And sometimes they're not in your family or your friends today. They could be virtually. I mean, look, that's how I met Daniel. Like,
yeah.
I've never met him, but you would think we've been like together forever, and Christian, you can't see Christian. But there's real people that are behind social media that genuinely want to see you win.
Yeah.
And you hold on to those people and you cheer them on too.
That is such a beautiful way to end it, because sometimes, I mean, I've made some amazing. Piper, who commented early on the show, is another person that I've met her online, and we've become good friends. And there's good and bad everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's good and bad everywhere. And you can't avoid it completely, but
There is.
But you can detour. Once you bump into that negative energy, you can walk away. But for those of you at home, you will find your way. And if you can't, contact us. Here is her information again. Go check her out. This is her site. Everything you need to contact her is right there. So go check out the site. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad. And I hope to see you guys next year in Cali.
Yes. So for those of you that follow both of us, you never know.
Oh, it's gonna go down like Bobby Brown.
I have this dream of doing a reunion of spirits, and where there's singing and there's comedy and there's workshops, and we're helping people find their light. I don't want you to find my light. I have my own.
Yeah, find your light.
But I want you to find your light, and that's the beautiful thing. And that's why I bring people on the show. So don't go anywhere. Let me say goodbye to everybody, and I'll be back to say goodbye. For everybody watching, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Remember, Putting Together Conversations is a show about you, folks, where you come from, where you are now, and what your journey is like. And we hope that today's episode has motivated you and inspired you to go after your dreams and goals. For everybody watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, thank you for commenting. Thank you for joining. If you're watching us on YouTube, remember, do us a favor, scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be notified every time there's a new episode. And where are we on? I'm glad you asked. We're on Wednesdays with the Christian and Daniel show. We're on Fridays with the Card Devo, and we're just going through a little rebranding. We'll be back soon with new episodes. And then on Saturdays, you can find 2 episodes of Putting Together Conversations at noon and 5 with a different guest on every show. Hey, but hit that notification bell, because we might have shows during the week and surprise you. So you want to get notified when those come up. Also, if you haven't heard me talk about it, I don't know where you've been, because I talk about it every show. Grumpy Bunny and the Colors Game. That's my book, illustrated by Jennifer and Vivian Gatch. You can find it at any of these outlets. And pay attention, because second edition is coming out. We changed printers, so edition 2 is coming out soon, along with the Spanish version. And if you're in the Southern California area or plan to be in LA for Comic-Con, we're going to be there. Bunny 17 Media will be there at our booth. So we'll have all of the books from Bunny 17 Media, along with my 2 books. And the way it looks right now, we should have the alignment deck, which is my deck, coming out probably for the new year. So pay attention to that. I will let you know when the deck comes out. For those of you who are already taking my spiritual coaching sessions, thank you. If you are interested in getting going through one of my sessions or getting the whole package, please get in touch with me and I will let you know on times and fees. For now, I want to thank Desi for being on the show and thank all of you for watching. And I will see you, I guess, next week. Bye. Oh.